episode of For You Lab Life, lab information for eye care professionals. Today, we are talking all things finishing, finish lab wise, that being in-house finishing at your own office or surface lab finishing. So your wholesale lab finishing the order for you. We're going to focus on benefits of in-house finishing, why you should consider having edging equipment in your office, and maybe some of the downsides to sending your full service work to labs. Today, it's me and Mark. We're going to tackle this. Mark has a ton of knowledge on the concepts at hand today. Best reasoning for ordering stock lenses, how to incorporate a finish lab in your office. And he has firsthand knowledge of how he's benefited from that. So Mark, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, so I've been very passionate about in-house finishing because I was always the guy at every office doing the in-house finishing, and I enjoyed it. To me, it was therapeutic. It was fun. When I owned offices later on, I bought equipment, put upgraded equipment, and it was really an integral part of my office and how my office functioned. And I know a lot of things have changed, not just equipment wise, but insurance companies. And there's been a lot of changes. And, sometimes offices stray away from in-house finishing. And, maybe it's just kind of a nebulous thought to them. They don't really put a lot of thought into it because maybe they don't understand the benefits, or in one of our later slides, we'll talk about some of the misconceptions as well. And, there's a lot of misconceptions about it, but, the most obvious benefit to me, and it's obvious to me, but maybe it's not obvious to every office, is the lens margins. Alex, back when I was doing it, and it's been a while, but on a high index AR job, single vision, I could save about $80. It seemed like it. I don't know if that's still the case, but I'm guessing it's still pretty similar, a large savings when you buy a stock lens, especially with any type of upgrade, right?
Right, yeah, and I mean, the more upgrades you have, the more you're going to save. There are stock lenses, endless stock lens options. You can have photochromatic, many different photochromatic, products, brands. You can have many different types of AR brands. So the more you add, the more you're going to save going the stock lens side of things.
Yeah, so in my own particular office, it was a small office. I had a doctor coverage. We saw patients about 2 days a week, and that was all we saw patients. But I added up my savings with stock lenses was about $2,000 a month. And I could buy an edger, a really nice one at the time, for 500 a month. And I'm sitting there doing the math, and I'm like, I'm not a genius here, but this math seems to make sense. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to have a piece of equipment, and I will have saved some money. So certainly, there's the margins is the number one reason. The next one is turnaround time. The stock lenses, how quickly are they shipping out right now, Alex? Is it?
They ship overnight, very next day. So if you order a stock lens in the afternoon, it will be at your door the next morning.
Yeah.
So it in today's age, with what the stock houses, one we're gonna show you later on in the training. There's not the need anymore for having to stock your own lenses at your office. Of course, you can if you'd like to. If your mantra is 1 hour service, by all means. But there's really no need. So I know a lot of the turn off of doing, in-house edging is, well, man, now I have to inventory stuff. Well, really you don't, which, it is a misconception that we battle every day. But luckily it's a very good positive.
Yeah, I mean, the supply chain has changed so much over time. It used to be every office had thousands and thousands of contact lens boxes, thousands and thousands of stock lenses for their edger. And that really just doesn't make sense anymore. And really all of retail has changed in that way. So whereas your local store would have this giant warehouse behind it, now it just has a receiving dock and it just, takes in what it can. And that really is the best way. We'll talk about some tips later in, what to inventory versus not inventory. But I encourage you to inventory as little as possible, especially the way things ship now, because you could just end up with a lot of old stale lenses that start turning yellow. And we've all seen that. I don't know if you've been in an office where you pull out old drawers of lenses and the CR39 is turning a little yellow. There's no real reason to do that anymore in this day and age. The next one to me is using patient's own frame without a massive delay, making them go without them, or having, some kind of fitment issue where it comes in and it's too large, or it comes in as too small, or, we've all dealt with those things. And it really helps the convenience factor of your patient. So there's some recent Vision Council data that said, why are customers buying online? And most of them said because of convenience. And then they asked everybody who purchased in store, and the people who purchased in store, they said we purchased in store because of convenience. So what that tells me is there's some offices that aren't convenient. So some people are ditching those offices. There are some convenient offices, but the main takeaway is customers are very, very focused on convenience. And this is something convenient that you can do for your customers, especially if they tend to maybe have an insurance plan that is every other year on a frame or something, or they're keeping that frame longer. So it really opens a lot of doors to satisfying your patients and being able to be more flexible for them. Um, and then the next one is capital equipment deduction. You've already missed it for 2022, but if you're sitting down doing your taxes and you're wishing you had a deduction and that's fresh on your mind, it's a great deduction because you can depreciate it year over year. And so it really is a good decision for your business in a lot of ways. Of course, speak to your own accountant about all of that. We're not accountants here today, but it certainly is, all around a really good thing for your business. And a lot of times these edgers will last long after they've been paid for, and are good to have, there in your business. So um, with this next slide, tips of the trade, which it kind of is going to bring together a lot of things that we've talked about in this series so far. And then I'm going to have Alex share his screen and show us when we get to the second point, how to order those products and how to maximize your reach. But I wanted to start off with decentration is the key because it ties into having a great supplier for your stock lenses as well. So I coincidentally always used the same supplier that Alex uses, which is Global. And because I like that variety. And, we've talked about how to make a lens look right in a frame as far as thickness goes. And we talked about on a plus lens how you want to be as small as you can possibly still decenter in that frame. So if you're edging a lot, you'll get to where you're doing decentration in your head. You're just you look at a PD, you look at a frame, and you go, okay, I've got to move this lens over 5 millimeters. Do I have enough blank? on say a 55 uh, eye size to move this over 5 millimeters. And then I would order my stock lenses accordingly. And especially on a plus lens, you want as small a blank as you can possibly still decenter and get that thin product. And that's really to me where using a stock lens warehouse that has a wide variety is so important. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen there and let Alex bring up and share his screen and show you the global lens warehouse and how to order, because I think that is so key.
Yeah, yeah, and what I really like, you know, on that slide and exactly what you said, it's not hard to, do the math on decentration and what size lens blank you need. One other misconception is, you have to have someone that's knowledgeable in the trade of finishing.
You're taking
I
away all of my next slide, Alex.
yeah, I'll be quiet then, but I'll leave you in suspense. It does. I'll leave it at it does not take anything crazy to understand. But let me share my screen and show you really how simple and easy this is to use a stock warehouse. If you're not using a stock warehouse, bluntly, you're doing it wrong. You have to. The days of the past are over when we used to call lens manufacturers and guess what they had. Those days are gone. Everything is right at your fingertips. For POG customers, if you're a POG customer and you're watching this, you probably already have a Go Stock account. Even if you've never talked about it, if you've never talked to us about it, even if you're not edging at your office, you probably have one. It's pretty typical for all of our customers to have it. If you don't, simply give us a call, reach out to your sales representative or to us directly. It takes us minutes to get you set up on this. So this is a test site, so we won't pay attention to any of the pricing. There will be pricing, but it's just fillers. But anyways, this is the main screen. It's just like shopping at any online retailer, really. So the very first thing that you want to hit is add items to cart. As soon as you do that, it brings you to drop-down menus where you can search for different class, finished, and equipment and supplies. If you are a lab customer, you'd also have semi-finished options here as well. But we'll focus on ECPs. So you'll stick to finished materials, many different materials, even glass. So you can already see that there is, a ton of options material-wise, plastic, glass, Trivex, 156 as well, mid-index, and then poly, and then some high index options as well. So we'll say, for example wise, I'm looking for plastic. There are, if you believe it or not, bifocal options in these stock lenses as well. Kind of hard to find, but we'll stick to single vision for now. Really cool things that we're just hitting on. The more add-ons you include, the more you're going to save. Of course, lab costs for things like anti-reflective can get in the $90 ranges, typically $25, $30, $40 range at most independent labs. So we'll say, we're sticking with scratch coded for what we're looking for. And then, of course, color, you can choose whichever color you'd want. These are other add-on options: blue blocking, photochromatic brown, photochromatic gray, polarized, what have you. So we'll stick with clear. And then this option, you'll see it changes as I pick maybe a different product. The selections below change for different, depending on what you're selecting. So we'll just go clear. And this here shows you the exact product. The line is the product that you're looking for. And now hitting on what we've discussed already, you can shop around for different diameters. Maybe you decide you need a 75 millimeter diameter to fit, with the decentration of your order, what have you. So 75 millimeter options, 70, 65, and you can also shop by price. So if there's a larger selection here, like there is, sometimes in uncoated, you can really search for price if there's a long list of these. If you're particular towards brand, you can also search for brands as well. So that really comes up when we go to photochromatic. So you can do Hoya lens choice, you can do Essler Transitions Gen 8, Younger Gen 8. So really up to you that way. The last step is viewing by cart. So, or chart, viewing chart. And this brings up the entire range that you're looking for. So vertical is sphere, horizontal is cylinder, and then these green, yellow, and red sections is real-time inventory. So it is actually what is in stock currently right now. So if I decide I need a pair, so you put in 2 for a pair, everything is per lens on Go Stock. So I put 2 for a pair for a plus a quarter sphere, and I'll just put test in there and add to cart. As soon as I add it to my cart, it is there. You can use tray as your patient name, or if you are using trays, you can put in your tray number there so that when we send you these products, it'll list out product by tray.
And that's a fairly new feature, right? I've ordered off of this site quite a bit, but it's been a long time. And used to be I'd get I'd get a pile of lenses and I'd start sorting trays out, going, oh my
yeah,
gosh, I don't know where these go.
yeah, and that was what I was just about to say. They uh, when Global sends you the order, they package it in the box based on the packing list that they send you as well. So, the very first product in the top of the box will be the very first product on the top of your list, and then it will also associate a trim. And like we said before, if I decided I wanted to order these 2 lenses, and there's usually a submit button right here, since this is a test site, it's not there. But if I hit submit, this would go to our warehouse. We would fill the order, and you would have it the very next morning for your particular patient. So that is very cool. And of course, you can change whatever you want. You can go to polycarb, you can have anti-reflectives, and I mean, look at all those options. It's endless. You can go brand name, or you can go all the way to something for low cost, that isn't necessarily brand specific. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of options, and best of all, you don't have to call anybody. You can do it all yourself right here.
Yeah.
So very cool stuff. And of course, if there's any issues or questions as you get started, we always have people here to help in real time.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the PowerPoint here, but um, there's so much you can do when you have that flexibility of product, whether you decide to order some spherical flat tops for some custom readers for a patient. There's a lot of different things that you can do when you have all of that availability. Shop by diameter, shop by spherical or aspheric. There's a lot of different things you can do when you're trying to make a job work and expand what you can actually cut in house, and try to get your overall lab bill down. And I'm surprised we're actually bringing this topic, Alex. We brought so many free tricks and things to help offices lower their lab bills through this series, such as digital ordering and all of these things. But at the end of the day, if you do better, we all do better, I think. So it only benefits all of us. As we mentioned before, because of how easy ordering that is, uh, I recommend that you don't stock a lot of product. Maybe a few key products. If you're cutting minus a quarter spheres a lot, if your doctor prescribes a bunch of those, you know, keep some basic powers of the materials you sell the most. I mean, if you only sell anti-reflective, then only stock anti-reflective. If you only sell a lot of value priced uncoated, then that's what you should stock. But just some minimal powers. And then one thing I would always do as well is I would keep just a handful of high powered poly lenses for somebody who's got some kind of eye problem. And that paid dividends over time for me to just have some way, if that person is a high minus contact lens wearer and they get an eye infection and they have no glasses, a lot of times I could get them something really quick, and get them going back about their day. So sometimes I would keep a handful of high powers on, maybe just in spheres, maybe not a big massive range of cylinder powers, but all in all, if you can get a lens the next day, you're going to be able to take care of most of your people very easily. And then you touched on this a little bit, but don't be afraid of the value lens lines, right? Share some of your thoughts relating to it. I used a lot of
Right.
Somo myself, but
Yeah, yeah, and what we run into a lot, as the lab and as the warehouse, as we're trying to help people, get used to this process, is we have, a lot of customers that get stuck with a certain manufacturer. They get stuck with a certain manufacturer and they get stuck with a certain product. There are, like we showed you, endless options. And what we always end up doing is pointing our customers towards some of the value products in global. It, I always tell, our customers when we have those conversations, I honestly can say I have never had someone call back and say, this AR on global is terrible, or this hard coating on global is terrible, or I'm having these lenses slip all the time on me. The products that are in global are there for a reason. We're not going to put something that we don't back. We're not going to have something that causes you issues. And again, I love this training. I'm glad we saved it for last because it hits on a lot of our prior topics. Go back and watch our full episode on anti-reflective coatings. Just because it's lower price does not mean that it's a lesser product. It's lower price because that company isn't paying money on extensive marketing. Probably why you've
yeah.
never heard of that product. So it for sure. And I would urge you, give one of them a try. Give the least, or excuse, the most cost effective lens a try, and you're going to be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I started using the Selmo lenses many years ago, primarily because I was looking for flatter base curves on my standard CR39 stock product. And back then, all there was the old Orma product, and it was all like between 6.5 and 8 base. Like it didn't matter the
Yeah.
power. It could be a -2, and it was coming on a 6.5 base. And it was really difficult in the 90s with rectangular plastic frames that everybody wanted to wear because my stock lenses would just pop out of them. And
Right.
and then Somo came along with these ultra flat CR39s, and I was like, these are great. I'll cut these all day long. And then I found the quality was great. And they're mass producing these stock lenses. They're typically getting the same hard coat on the front and the back. So a lot of times you're getting a lens that's made in a very controlled environment, more so than sometimes what comes out of a surfacing lab, because all they're doing is making a stock lens and coating them all day long, same big batches of product, and they're just focused on that one manufacturing line. So sometimes, those their coatings are very, very good. And you can select different levels of coatings. And if you want more of a generation one cheap coating or maybe a gen two coating, there's different price levels to match up with the different price levels you're already selling in office. And um, plus, your margin is so high that you can warranty, you can feel like, okay, if I've got to replace a $2 lens, I'll replace a $2 lens to make a customer happy. So you've got a lot more wiggle room in your margins to satisfy a customer as well. So it really, I think we're thinking in our mind that we've paid a bunch for this lens, and what if I have to replace it? But that's really not the case. You've gotten such a great deal on a stock lens that you can take care of your patient over and over and over. And sometimes it's a great option for that customer who's really hard on stuff and there's no coating that's going to help them. Um, it hurts a lot less if you're taking care of them sometimes with a stock lens. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. The last thing, on the mind that a lot of people don't think about in terms of price, on global is, that product selection, that is a battleground for these lens manufacturers. They are fighting as hard as they can to get to that low cost spot.
yeah,
And they do that because, our customers and global customers have figured out exactly what we're talking about. They can go to that lowest cost
yeah,
product and do just fine. So we get a lot of questions like, how is the pricing, better than if I go direct to the lens manufacturer? And it's like, well, this is a competition battleground,
yeah,
that we're giving you access to, and it's constantly, updated. You don't have to do anything. We update it for you as manufacturers lower their price, as they bring out more products. It shows up in there, and
yeah.
you don't have to do anything. So yeah, another really good thing to keep in mind price wise.
And my last tip of the trade to pass on before we get to misconceptions, but keep a variety of lens edging pads. If you're just cutting uncoated CR39, the cheapest pad you can buy is going to work just fine. But it is worthwhile to keep a few high-end pads around for some of them slippery lenses. And Alex, I don't know if you guys have your favorite ones or if you do a lot of taping or whatever your method is. I would always keep some tape circles and have a little area where you've got maybe a paper towel dispenser that's got a roll of the cheapies, a roll of the expensive hydrophobic ones, maybe a roll of tape circles. What do you guys recommend there, Alex?
Yeah, and that's absolutely. I mean, anything that your lab is doing, you should probably try to do the exact same thing. And we're doing exactly what you mentioned. I mean, we're edging, thousands, 2,500 lenses a day. And, that of course adds up really quickly if you're using, the high dollar hydrophobic AR. You know, if you're using those on every single order, you're going to be losing money. Your office manager is going to say, "How the heck are we spending so much money on stock lenses?" So definitely do that. Global as well has its own leap pads on the site as well. There's multiple different ones for hydro AR. There's ones, for just the hard coated ones. So there's a ton of options on there, and it's nice because as soon as you run out, you can order them on Global and they'll show up the next day. And of course, just like anything else, the leak pad products on there are ones that we 100% back, and the ones that are on global are the ones that we use here in the lab as well.
Great. All right, so you've been dying to get to misconceptions. So
Yep.
we're at the misconceptions. And I thought while we're thinking about misconceptions, I'd throw up a picture of an old pattern edger because I'm afraid that's what comes to some people's mind when they think of edging, because that really was a craft and that really was hard and it really was time consuming and it really took training and it took a lot of space in your office. Um, so the first misconception, I don't have space. And I put finishing lab in quotes because it used to be a finishing lab. Like you needed this big area, and now you need a little space on a table somewhere. That's really what you need, and it doesn't take a lot of space. My friend who installs a lot of edgers says you would believe the places I've put edgers, closets and basements, attics, bedrooms, all kinds of places. You don't need a lot of space for one. And then um, Alex was getting close on the topic of my staff isn't trained. And if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean that, and of course everything that comes to my mind is things, that we've heard uh from our customers. And I mean really today with today's technology, with how tracers are, how desktop edgers are, I mean really there's not, if you, the decision maker, have some knowledge in edging, even better. But I'm not afraid to say, if someone's coming into it fresh, they're going to be figuring it out quickly. Even better if someone right away, for sure.
Yeah, so and we lost a little bit of audio there, but um, one of the things that I've said before, I picked it up from somebody else, but if you can get your money out of an ATM, you can run today's edgers, and and really they are quite simple to operate. They've come so far in user friendliness. Their capabilities have expanded. I used to run a little hand groover. That was horrible. Um, Now the auto grooving and the capabilities that they have, many of them have built-in tracers, built-in blockers. There's a lot of things that are really designed around that office and making it really entry level for the office. Some of them even take the work out of decentration. So you can set them on a mode where it blocks it a different way and you don't even have to know decentration. You just put the frame information in and the PD and it does everything for you. So that goes right along with the next point. The next misconception, it's really hard. And it's not. I mean, it is I've ran the pattern edgers and that is hard. I mean, trying to figure out set the curve right on the machine and cutting patterns by hand, getting tendonitis, and that was hard. But today's tracers, blockers, edgers, really so much easier to run. Since I've been the guy that did most of the cutting at most places, that means every time I moved or left somewhere, I was also the guy training somebody. And I've trained dozens of people to run edgers. And then when I got in wholesale, I would visit an office that had an edger sitting in the back and nobody was running it. And I would say, how come nobody's running that edger? Well, nobody knows how. I'm like, well, come here, let me show you this edger. And I've done that a dozen times or more. And it really isn't that difficult to do. A lot of times, again, use your lab as a resource. they may have one of their lab reps that can show you that old piece of equipment that's sitting in your office, how to fire that thing up and make it make some money for you. So um, the next misconception, there isn't any savings in stock lenses, which we've already pretty well destroyed that. But you saw, if you when we were on that screen, you saw some of those prices, a couple dollars for a CR39 lens. $4 a pair for a coated CR39, or uncoated, maybe $3 a pair. There's definitely some savings there, and then it's exponential when you get to high index, poly, transitions, AR, or all of that together. There is a lot of savings for a busy office. A busy office, it could be 3,000, 4,000 a month in savings, depending on how much single vision work was flowing through there. And nowadays with today's edgers, I wouldn't be afraid to do a lot of uncuts as well. Do you have a lot of uncut customers, Alex?
Yeah, and we're kind of unique with a couple of our larger customers, being full service. But talking to most wholesale labs today, I mean, they're going towards the area of like 70% uncuts.
Wow.
Some say 80% uncuts. With while we're on the topic, of savings, most labs charge an edging fee. And those, fees really are just going to keep, increasing. Of course, POG has rarely any price increases, but just talking about in general, in the industry, it's something that's going to start turning into, more of a specialty type thing when you're sending a finish order to your surfacing lab. They're getting, in the range of, $15, 12, $15 for edging an order. And so, offices, ECPs, want to get away from that as soon as possible, before that's the norm, because no one wants that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 20 some years ago when I started, on average, a lab would charge a couple bucks for edge and mount.
Right.
Unless it was a groove job, then it was maybe $10. And then a lot of them would have a fee for full rimless. And so those are fees that, if you're looking at your statements with most labs every month, you're going to see those fees. And again, they're going to get more and more common. Maybe they've always been there, but didn't stand out as much because they were less. But certainly with supply chains and the way things are going in our world, as we see inflation, et cetera, you're going to see some of those fees creeping up, I would imagine. So it certainly will help offset that. The next misconception, I won't get a quality finish. And again, my eyes are fixated on that old machine because I know how hard it was to get a lens to fit right, the way it used to be. But it really has changed so much. The products that are out there, the equipment that's out there. I mean, even the caliber of used equipment that's out there is so much higher than the caliber of used equipment that used to be out there. So wherever your entry point is, you can get a quality job, even if you want to limit that to certain ranges within your office. And it's good to do that. Limit it to, anything outside this range, I'm just sending it to my lab. If it's a four-cylinder and something really weird, send it. Don't be afraid to send it. You're saving money on a lot of jobs as it is, but you can, with today's equipment, get a high quality finish. I'm sure, a lot of what is in offices, it may not be as powerful as what is in your surfacing lab, but a lot of that technology has really, it used to lag way behind what was at the full service lab, but it's pretty close as far as what kind of technology. I mean, maybe in your case, a higher production, they're thicker shafts, they're stronger servo motors, but a lot of that same technology is available in an in-office model, right?
Yeah, and that, it's I had the exact same thought on my mind too. What I like about these trainings is we're more transparent than any other training that you're gonna find. We're not afraid to tell you, what's gonna help your office. And it's really should not be any, secret that our edging equipment is the same edging equipment that you're going to have in your office in terms of quality. Of course, you're not going to have, a big MEI racer in your
Right.
office or anything like that. We use, edgers for output here, but we definitely have our desktop edgers as well, that we use sometimes, and I've seen the same desktop edgers at ECP offices. Um, even in terms of quality, of course, your wholesale lab is going to give you, the best absolute quality that we possibly can. But even with your own edging at your office, you really do have more control over that order than your wholesale lab does. And it's just the way, that ordering methods are set up today. If you're sending, a full service order to your lab, we're starting those lenses before we even see your frame. So, in today's age, we're, really taking a guess, a stab in the dark at what your frame looks like. We may have your measurements, we may have, an idea of what it is, but we don't know exactly. And so it goes all the way back to our first training on, lens thickness. If you want the absolute best lens thickness, if you want the best absolute quality, there has to be a trace first before the lens comes, which is typically, what happens at an ECP office. Really, I mean, at the end of the day, the quality, could be just as good, maybe a little bit better since you have more control. But one thing that I like that you included, Mark, don't be afraid, to send something if it's a high RX, if it's a big wrap frame. A lot of wholesale labs have specialty edging equipment, like the special MEI edgers or Satislow QMXs, where you really do need a very specialized individual and specialized equipment to get those done. I mean, you're not going to be doing, V hooks and notches at your office. So, let someone, that has been doing that for a lot of years do that at the wholesale lab. So I'm glad you included that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend waste a lot of time in your office trying to, and I would cut everything I could cut, especially since I own the office, and
Right,
push the limits of what kind of wrap I could cut in house. And some edgers are pretty good at it, but you still have to have a certain amount of acumen to pick the bevel, place the bevel in the software, and make it happen. Whereas your lab is doing that every day. And so I recommend not stressing yourself out on those crazy wraps or hooks or any of those things. Ship those off to your lab.
right,
But those regular run of the mill jobs, that goes to my next point. My staff doesn't have time. Um, today's edger, you're not standing over it like that old one in the picture. A job, a lens might edge in a minute or two. And I did all of my paperwork back by the edger. I'd throw a job on and do whatever else I had to do. Wasn't something that has to be as babysat as it used to be when you were, say, running a pattern etcher or something like that. It's set it and forget it, and it's a pretty simple process. So, a lot of times you may think your staff doesn't have the time, but really it's not that time consuming. I've worked at offices where I was doing 50 a day, that is a full-time job. In a in office finishing 50 jobs a day, that is pretty full-time. But the average office, after you figure out what you have to send to insurance, don't, can do in-house, actually is within your power ranges, that can be between 10 and 20 a day sometimes at the most. Very simple to handle, one or two people in your office in their spare time. So really doesn't have to be a massive, massive time taking thing. And there is tasks that it's eliminating. You're not shipping a job to a lab. There are some things you're not doing. So you're setting a tray in the lab, and when your lenses come in, you flop them in there and put the order together. And so it really isn't that burdensome. Staff time, staff talent, it's not that burdensome. If you've got staff that's got time to check Facebook, you've got staff that can that can edge some lenses more than likely. And it's not all of that complicated overall. Most of us who do finishing, we want our bosses to think it's complicated. We want to feel irreplaceable, Alex. But the truth is, and we're letting the truth out, it's just not that hard anymore. So anything else that you wanted to add along those misconceptions before we wrap it up?
No, I think we like we've discussed, we saved this for last on purpose. It hits a lot of what we've already discussed in terms of lens thickness, controlling your own lens thickness, in terms of you have to do decentration when you pick stock lens. So I mean, your employees in your office are going to learn that very quickly, or you're going to be ordering the wrong size blanks. So I mean, that hits on our very first training. We talked about anti-reflective stock lenses and how their quality really can be better than your wholesale labs AR process. And that's no secret, that's for sure true. And other things on online ordering. This is online ordering. It's going to it's going to save you time ordering stock lenses online rather than calling. It's the same thing as a lab order. You have the ability to do it online now. Of course, you use VisionWeb for sending your RX orders or your lab orders, and you use Global Optics for your stock orders. So it really hits on everything, that we've discussed already, and just kind of wraps it up into, here's actual solutions that are going to save you time, money, and effort for sure. So it's a great topic. It definitely should help out.
Yeah, it's one that I talk to accounts regularly about. It pairs well with the idea of the fact that we're a value frame provider, because you can take a value frame, a stock lens, and now suddenly you are very, very competitive in the marketplace. So it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. And thank you everyone for joining us. Again, these will be available on YouTube. Thanks, Alex, again. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking about these things.
Thank you.